Crescit Load Banks is a market leader in the design, manufacture and rental of industrial load banks. We've been producing load banks for testing diesel and gas power generators for more than 35 years. Our load banks test standby generators all around the world to ensure that when called upon, they can operate effectively and safely at the correct voltage, capacity and frequency. Whether it's data centre commissioning, marine power plants or healthcare, all generators require regular maintenance and load testing is a critical piece of that process. Increasingly, load banks are part of the sophisticated power systems that run major enterprises or grid balancing renewable systems. We are delighted that you have chosen a Crescit Load Bank for your power system testing application. This video aims to allow you to successfully perform a commissioning task to allow you to use your load bank safely and without issue. The following will guide you through the commissioning of your load bank. Personnel carrying out this should be electrically competent and familiar with the equipment during the commissioning. The standard commissioning form should be used and completed. The load bank manual will also be required to refer to during the commissioning. If at any stage any uncertainty or problems occur, contact Crescit UK for assistance. The load bank has probably travelled a long distance from where it was manufactured. Therefore, the load bank should be inspected for any scratches or more serious damage that may have occurred during shipping. If there does happen to be any scratches, then this should be addressed as soon as possible to help protect the enclosure from corrosion. Before you can use your new load bank, the packaging material must be removed, remembering not to forget to check on top of the load bank. Sometimes we may pack items inside the load bank, like the controller and control leads. These should be removed and unpacked. Your new load bank will require plenty of space around it, especially where air is drawn in through the air inlet grills. A minimum of 2 meters is required here. Adequate space all around the load bank should be given for future servicing and maintenance. The load bank should be sited on a level and stable surface. We don't want foreign items getting sucked into the load bank. Therefore, check around the load bank for any litter, leaves, etc. and remove these. As we have said, the load bank may have been on a long journey to get to you, so checking inside for any water or dust ingress is important. This should be removed if present. A visual check on all fixing and components should be completed. This includes, but is not limited to, fixing, bus bars, bus bar supports, fans, contactors, fuses and PCBs. Safety is most important during all work with the load bank, including the commissioning of it. We highly recommend erecting safety barriers around the load bank and other associated equipment to prevent unauthorised persons entering the area. During normal operation of the load bank, all panels and doors should be shut, making sure all catches on each panel are locked to create a good seal and prevent water ingress. During commissioning, some of these panels or doors will have to be opened to perform checks and connect cables. Care should be taken to prevent rain getting inside. Personal protective equipment should be worn by operatives of the load bank and possible nearby persons as an extra measure of safety. An example of this is when the load bank fans are running and persons are nearby to the load bank. Earring protection should be worn to prevent earring damage. General and site-specific safety should be followed at all times. Using an insulation resistant meter, the insulation resistance should be taken on all supply connections on the load bank. Typically, the load bank has an appliance supply input for the anti-condensation heaters and lights, an auxiliary supply input for the load bank control circuit, and of course the load supply. The insulation resistance should be measured and then recorded on the commissioning form. Please note, when completing an insulation resistance test on the load supply, the load bank's transducer should be isolated. This is typically done by switching off the circuit breaker feeding this transducer, referring to the wiring diagrams to check which circuit breaker this is. Some load banks may also have an energy meter. Again, the circuit breaker feeding this should be off before completing an insulation resistance test. Please refer to the manual for further information. Your load bank has probably been supplied with a controller to control the load bank. If this is the LC80 tablet or a PC, then this is a good time to plug the controller into the main socket to charge the internal battery. At this stage, the controller can also be connected into the low bank. It is likely your low bank will be using the new fibre connectivity. With the LC80 or PC, a media converter box is required called a FMC1. This should be located nearby to where the controller is and will require mains power. The low bank controller can be located a substantial distance away from the low bank if required, for example in an office or control room. If this is the case, a fibre cable extension cable reel will be used. This connects between the low bank and the FMC1 box. A cable is then connected between the LC80 or PC to the FMC1 box. On the LC80 or PC, the software required to control the low bank and complete the commissioning of the low bank is called Orion. At this stage, it is a good idea to check this is present on the controller. We are now ready to start connecting cables to the low bank. As mentioned previously, there are generally 3 supplies. For the appliance supply and auxiliary supply, the cable for these supplies should be sufficient for the power being drawn. The low bank manual should be referred to for these details. The load supply connections should be sufficient for the quantity of power required. Therefore, the cable ratings do not have to be the full power ratings of the load bank. Once the supplies are connected to the low bank, these can be turned on in turn and various checks can be performed. Firstly, the appliance supply can be turned on. Once on, the voltage and frequency should be checked and recorded on the commissioning form. The RCD should be checked for function. With the RCD on, press the test button to trip the RCD. Once completed, the RCD can be switched back on. Now the supply is on for the anti-condensation heaters and lights, the heaters should be checked for function, along with the internal light. There are switches for both of these. It is recommended that the anti-condensation heaters are left on. These are then controlled by thermostats to maintain a minimum temperature. The auxiliary supply can now be turned on. The voltage and frequency should be checked and recorded on the commissioning form. Now the auxiliary supply is live onto the load bank, various checks should be completed. These are as follows. Please note, not all may be applicable to your low bank. Check auxiliary supply live indicators. Check control switches are functioning when switched to the required positioning. For example, switching the low bank control switch from off to external will allow power to the majority of the control circuit. Don't forget to check the emergency stop is out. Once the control switches are in the correct positions, communication between the low bank controller can be established. Please refer to the Orion software manual on using this software. In the Orion software, Press and Go will gather information from the low bank and show the low bank specification and settings. Once the screen where the fans can be started is reached, start the fans and check these are running in the correct direction. The cooling fans beneath the elements or resistors blow air over the elements. Therefore, air is being sucked in through the side grills, over the elements and out the top as hot air when on load. When the cooling fans are running, this is near to the maximum power required by the control system. Therefore, the current should be measured and recorded on the commissioning form. Whilst the fans are running, the system running indicator will be on. This should be checked. Once the fans have been confirmed as functioning correctly, this is a good opportunity to test the system stop buttons. On pressing these, the fans will stop and communication with the low bank's controller will be lost. All low banks have a system stop button on their enclosure. It is also possible to connect a remote system stop button, and this should also be tested at this stage. Releasing the system stop button will restart the low bank and the startup sequence can be started again. It is possible to link the system stops when having more than one low bank. This is done using the orange interconnecting cable. Once connected, pressing the system stop on one load bank will activate the system stop function on other load banks connected. The load supply can now be turned on. The voltage and frequency should be checked and recorded on the commissioning form. Now we have a supply from our load supply source, we can apply some loads. It should be checked that the supply voltage, frequency and power ratings of the equipment being tested is set correctly within the Orion software. This is to prevent overloading the equipment being tested. Care should also be taken when applying and removing load in that the equipment being tested is able to accept the load steps being applied. The load bank does not have any limits on the quantity of load being applied or removed at any one time. When load is applied, the instrumentation within the Orion software should be cross-checked with an external meter or instrumentation on the equipment being tested, making sure power readings are similar. After various loads have been applied, the load can be removed and the shutdown sequence can be started. This is started by pressing the stop button in the Orion software. Once pressed, the load bank requires 4 minutes for the fans to run on and cool the elements to a safe temperature. Once the countdown timer has finished, the cooling fans will stop and the shutdown sequence is now complete. Some load banks have a function to power the load bank's control circuit from the load source of the equipment being tested. This function can be tested providing the supply voltage and frequency is within range of a load bank's control supply specification. Please refer to the manual for your load bank. To test this function, switch the control switch to the internal position. Communication with the load bank via the load bank's controller can be then established and the load bank startup sequence can be completed. Once this test has been completed and the load bank shutdown sequence has been completed, this concludes the commissioning of the load bank. The control switches should be switched to the off position. The load supply should be switched off and made safe. Depending if the load bank is permanently installed or is temporarily installed, the auxiliary supply and appliance supply can be left connected and live. It is recommended that the appliance supply is left connected and live in all situations. This is for the anti-condensation heaters and will therefore prevent condensation occurring within the load bank. If the load bank is temporarily installed, it is recommended that the control cables are put away to prevent possible damage occurring to these. All doors and panels should be fully locked after using the load bank. This is to prevent water ingress. The commissioning form should now have been completed. A copy of this should be sent to Crescit for checking and confirmation the load bank has been commissioned.